Welcome to the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. In this podcast, we cover all topics on how to grow your B2B SaaS, no matter in which stage you're in. I'm Joran Hoffman, the host of the show and the founder of Redditus, which is a B2B SaaS that helps other B2B SaaS companies to set up, manage, and grow an affiliate program. Being a founder myself means I'm going through the exact same journey as you are, experiencing the exact same issues, and probably have the exact same questions. And this is why I started the podcast in the first place. Get advice from industry experts on how to grow my B2B SaaS. So if you like this content, make sure to subscribe, follow, give it a thumbs up. Let's just dive in. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to build a $1 billion business in a year. My guest is Adam Robinson, the founder of retention.com and R-B2B. Both are focused on identifying website visitors on a personal level, where retention is focused on e-commerce. R-B2B is focused on B2B, as the name is already indicating. Adam is trying to scale and bootstrap his company to a unicorn in public, and he even has a TV series called the $1 Billion Challenge. Before retention.com, he bootstrapped Robly email marketing to an 8-figure exit as co-founder CEO. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Nice. I'm going to start with a Dutch blunt question. Why should people listen to you today?
That's a great blunt question. I think people should listen to me because I'm now currently launching my third bootstrapped startup. And once you're lucky, twice you're good. I'm not even sure. We don't know what the third one's going to be yet, but I think that's a pretty good reason.
Yeah, so third time lucky charm?
We'll see. Yeah.
Nice. And you're trying to basically build a $1 billion company. Like, what does it mean to you?
That's an interesting one. I was very convinced like 16 months ago that by honing in on the ideal customer profile at retention.com, it would eliminate this churn problem we had. And we were in a position to do something similar to what this company I was sharing my office with, Jasper AI, had done over the course of the year, and like really get revenues to explode in 12 months. I wanted to make a docuseries about it because I was like, either this is going to go great or horribly wrong. I want to capture it. So it was just a catchy title to call it the $1 Billion Challenge. It didn't actually get there, but it doesn't really mean much to me other than like unicorn status is like an Olympic gold medal of startups, in my opinion. For my ego as an entrepreneur, I would love to bootstrap 100 million ARR at some point. I don't have any timeline about that. I don't really care if it happens or not. It would just make me feel really validated. So that's like the same thing as a $1 billion.
You can say even because evaluation is something somebody else puts a value on the company,
Yeah.
right? Where you probably want to go for the ARR, which is something you can measure, control yourself.
And there's ways that I wouldn't want to do it. Like I wouldn't want to take a bunch of VC money to then be told that my company was worth $1 billion, right? I wouldn't be willing to do that in service of evaluation. So like, it really doesn't mean that much to me. It's just a word that gets attention. For good reason maybe, but that's what it's all about.
And I think you get quite a bit of attention. At least I see you all the time on LinkedIn. And even to quote you, you go for radical transparency. Why? Why did you take this approach?
So 18 months ago, I mentioned earlier, I was like, we have an opportunity to make a unicorn. At that point, we had 6 employees. I had never done any marketing. My co-founder was doing the sales, and she had this 5-person operation in the Philippines that was doing lead gen and just sending email manually. And the product was so good that between that and word of mouth, that was what we were doing. And when we thought that this audience that we had focused on, which is like the top 1% of the Shopify ecosystem, was very large, and Klaviyo was doing really well, and there were a couple other very large companies that were serving them. And by the way, as I mentioned before, I had been sharing an office with the Jasper AI guys 2 years before they started that company. So they were going through this like radically transformative phase. They raised $200 million. They like hired all these like amazing VC type people. So long story short, thought the opportunity was much bigger than it actually ended up being. But at that point, I'm like, I have an awareness problem. We have no competitors in this market. If every one of these stores knew about us, they would use it immediately. What's the quickest way to spread awareness? And I read this book called Founder Brand by Dave Gerhardt, which I would highly recommend if you're like a CEO type. I talked to a bunch of people, and I thought that growing a personal profile on social media was the fastest way to generate awareness. Because someone said this to me, and I believe it, people are on social media to connect with people, not brands. So I had never done anything like that, but I had seen a few work and public efforts done. The main one, Nathan Barry, like I was in this email newsletter space and this guy was growing this company called ConvertKit and blogging very transparently about it. I knew how interested I was in the information. And so I knew that kind of thing would do well. So that's part of it. It's like when you're creating content, being shocking is always a plus. I don't necessarily understand why, but like nothing shocks people more than sharing your numbers. So it's two things for me. It's like sharing the numbers and sharing the losses. Like the combination of those two things are like a 100x from sharing things that are not your numbers and your wins, right? Because that's what every company does.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the end, people want the transparency to figure out, can I do the same? Where is he actually at? Because when you talk about numbers, I guess you mentioned at the beginning, we're not there yet, as in, where are you now revenue-wise?
21.5 million ARR. 4 months ago, we were 22. We've been shrinking 0.5% every month. It sucks.
Yeah, and I guess this is what you get when you're radical transparent. You also have to share if things are not going well.
It really sucks from an employee perspective. It's not what you want to share. We have 5 competitors now. We had 0 18 months ago. There's one side of the argument that the reason so many people have come into the market is because I was sitting there yelling about how hard we were crushing it. I think it's another reason. I think it's like these people found the problem we were solving in a different way. They realized the problem they were solving, actually, they could bolt on a solution that would solve the problem we're solving, and it made their product way better. I think they would have gotten there anyway, but that's certainly a fear that people bring up all the time. It's, if I share how well I'm doing, a bunch of other people are going to start doing it. So I believe that it's offset by the velocity of growth and the amount of awareness that you get from it. In other words, we wouldn't be where we are now. We may have less competitors, but we would be at a fraction of the revenue that we have now, had I not done that, right?
Yeah, so in the end, the benefits will outweigh the downsides of getting more copycats.
That is my belief.
Yeah.
You can't quantify it. There's no way for you to ever tell how being radically transparent on social media would or would not have affected competitors showing up. But my belief is that I just see the benefit of the awareness, right? Because it's not only the way that I'm telling our story right now. It is not only that's being shared. Mm-hmm. It's not just these emotionless pieces of information that are getting thrown out into the world. This is a weird thing to say. Like, I'm making this content that is making people think that they are my friend when they have never met me. Oh. That's something very different than just throwing out information about your financials. So it's something much more powerful, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, I believe this is the future of brand. Like, I sell sketchy products. Nobody is questioning using our B2B. I think a big reason why is because I've built this trust over the last, specifically the B2B market, the last 7 or 8 months, right? That needs to be weighed in also. There are unmeasurable things about the type of affinity that can be created through this founder brand.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because we have somewhat the same. We are in affiliate marketing. If people think about affiliate marketing, B2C, they think of all these shady things. Totally. And we do the same where I go out there, there's a face behind the brand, there's a face behind what we do, so you build more trust.
Yes.
You already did an 8-figure exit, planning to build a 9-figure company right now. What are you going to do different?
The 8-figure company did not have product market fit, and it was in a super commoditized, highly mature space. Both of my companies now, like when I started, retention.com was called Get Emails. No one had ever heard of anything like it before. And it was in a fringe market that had 0 competitors. So that's a big differentiator. I want to operate in places where there is not competition for reasons that I understand. And I also want to craft core offers that are fundamentally impossible to compete with to try to create a moat, which is like this free thing that I'm doing with RB2B. Like, people can't even believe it. They're like, what do you even mean that it's free forever and you're going to just pump leads into my Slack for as long as I want to? It doesn't even make sense. But in doing that type of thing, I know for a fact, like, there's this guy, Chris Walker, who I know who's an influencer on LinkedIn. Like, somebody went to him, they're like, I want to compete. They didn't say RB2B. They're like, I want to compete with Adam Robinson in person level identity. I just have no idea what to do because he's giving it away for free. So that kind of represents the arc of my point of view on all of this stuff. Like, now I'm playing, it's like, I thought retention.com was going to be a unicorn. It is not. It is now a great cash cow. It's going to make our founders $7 million this year. And now I'm trying to play for this like total market domination and worry about revenue and monetization later, you know?
Yeah, because there are kind of two sides, right? You're going to give away a lot for free and you want to get to that revenue goal.
Yeah, I think the longer you can hold off on prioritizing monetization, the more you will be able to monetize when the time comes, because your user base is just growing exponentially.
Yeah.
So assuming that you can monetize at some percent on some multiple of whatever you're charging, it's whatever. If you wait, in extreme case, 10 years, you're going to have 10 million people. If you wait 5 years, you'll have 1 million people. If you wait 2 years, you'll have 100,000. So whatever that multiplier is, it just gets so much more powerful when it comes. And I believe that even if we didn't charge $1 for this product, if we had 80% of the TAM using it, that's a $1 billion company in itself. Yeah. Because people would know that the day you flipped it on, A, there are no other competitors that will ever enter the market because you are synonymous with this. It's like Google, right? They're getting some competition now, but they had a long period of time where there was nobody. And then once you flip it on, the multiplier on that user base is just so profound that there's just tremendous value to just having the unquestionably dominant market position within a valuable TAM of anything.
You mentioned as well, like your revenue is flattening, right? You call it like that. What is the goal for you on a monthly level? Like the number of signups, is that where you currently...
So there's two separate businesses, right? The e-com business and the motion and the metrics, they have nothing to do with this B2B thing.
Yeah.
The e-com thing, I thought I had 100 million ARR potential 18 months ago. I do not think that anymore. I think that it can get to 25, maybe 30 if we're lucky, but it is a high churn product and a high churn buyer persona. And we can reduce that, but no matter what we do, it's not going to look like a CRM from churn characteristics, or like an ESP like Klaviyo from churn characteristics. So knowing that, I'm going to try to extract every dollar possible and not plan to get like some sort of exit on that because it's like a high growth machine. That allows us to do very different and crazy things with this new company, right? So on a monthly basis, we're evaluating. It's tough, right? Because I don't know when that's going to start growing again. There are some issues that we need to clean up, and we need to like refine the pipeline generation and reduce the churn or whatever, because that's really what SaaS is at the end of the day. It's, can you generate enough pipeline to outpace churn? If you can, it's going up. If you can't, it's going down. And then the other business, it's been around for 28 days. We've had 3,000 people sign up and 2,600 install our script. How are you supposed to evaluate what's going to happen next month? I don't know. Yeah. Like we have 28 days of history. Thank God we're bootstrapped. If we had taken growth equity a year and a half ago, sold the stream to people, I don't think I would even be offered the opportunity to pursue the B2B opportunity like we're doing. Yeah. I would certainly have people breathing down my neck, demanding for answers on the D2C side, which I've mentally all but, I don't think about it anymore. My co-founder Diana runs it. We have once a week meeting. That's it. It's cool. Is it still going to crank out $7 million this year? Okay, fine. I'm happy. On here.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. And in the end, you can take the free strategy, right? As you mentioned, because if you had VCs, then they would probably ask you to charge.
I would just think that it's just not aligned with how they are forced to look at the world. They need stacking revenue history with like low churn that creates this narrative that it's going to continue forever. And it's not what I think the optimal go-to-market for the long term is for this product. But it's amazing because no other company with institutional funding could ever do something like it, right? Oh. Like they just can't allocate resources that way.
Yeah, and in the end, you have a really comfortable position, right? Company one, generating money, so you can focus on that. Make it sound easy, but you probably hit rock bottom one day, either financially, personally. What was your moment where you just hit rock bottom?
I had a few of them. I'll tell you a couple stories. So the first startup that we sold for $10 million, we got it to 3 million through this data mining strategy. Like it was pre-built with, like pre-datanized, and we were just like, it was in the email newsletter space, and we were figuring out who constant contact customers were, calling them up and just pitching them 50% more opens for half the price or whatever on a $45 subscription. It's terrible. So I had a list of 250,000 leads, and then I had a list of a couple million from a different part of their website that was of inferior quality. Meaning I had a list of who we knew to be their paying customers. And then we had this much larger list that was much less detailed of people who had signed up for free trials. The paying customer list converted great. The metrics on the salespeople were excellent. And then I tested the free trial list with my best people. It looked like it was going to work. Ramped up the sales force. And then I had 38 people calling the second list, and the people were not even picking up the phone. It wasn't a matter of, oh, could we tweak some things to make the economics work? It's like the fundamental list was totally broken. Luckily, I had been in the game for a few years. I had fired people. I had realized that never in my career, the saying is always, I've never regretted firing somebody, I've just regretted not doing it sooner. It was like, it was my fault, it was terrible, it was stupid, I don't know how I would have done it differently, but I got us in this position where this didn't work. You can't just keep doing something on that type of scale that didn't work. I had 25 people in a room, I was like, if you are in this room, you no longer have a job. This is how I fucked up, whatever. And then get slammed on Glassdoor, and that was a horrible day.
Yeah.
It was bad for a little while. There were a couple of situations I felt really bad about. Like we brought a recruiter in to help scale the sales org. She was a foreign national. It was a visa problem. It was a fucking disaster. So that sucked. That was a low point. There was another point 2 weeks before we sold the business where we had these developers in Argentina and our tech was put together with string and bubble gum, like very cheaply, right? Things always crashed. Databases always froze. So there was a normal crash. And in this AWS instant, there's a drop-down menu where you can restart a node or you can stop a node. And they're right next to each other. And these are people that don't speak English. So in a distributed database with 4 nodes, if one goes down, you're fine. If the second one turns off, your whole website's gone. If he hit restart on the first one, that would have been fine. But instead he picked stop, and then it caused a second node to freeze, which he also stopped. Whole database is gone. And then we went to the backup, and in order to save money, my CTO was rewriting the backup as a work in progress. So we did not have a complete backup. This was 2 weeks before we were supposed to get $10 million wired to us, right? Literally, I was walking around Austin with my dog for 8 hours. Like I found out about this at 10 in the morning, walking around with my dog for 8 hours, trying to internalize that it was just money. I had a better business that was coming. I would make money in the future. That's all that this was, right? It took till 4 a.m. the next day. Somehow these guys were able to dig into this broken backup file and restore 96% of the website or whatever. And the buyer never found out. I actually think we had to disclose it to them. But yeah, I mean, that's the most intense thing I've ever been through with respect to my job.
And I guess the one question regarding the first thing you mentioned, the layoff, you mentioned it was hard. How did you deal with it? Because it's not easy to stand in a room of 25 people and say, you don't have a job anymore.
A pretty close analogy is if you walked outside right when you woke up and it was freezing cold and you had to get in a 37-degree cold plunge. You just have to fucking do it. You know what I mean? There's no other way to describe it. I've had to fire senior people and it's been just as bad. The anxiety going into the conversation and the anxiety during the conversation is even worse because you're just dealing with one of them, and it's if you haven't really telegraphed it well, it just sucks. It's one of these things in life that you just have to breaking up with someone you've lived with who's a partner. I don't know if you've ever done that. That is even worse. It's this level. It's the unfortunate. It's the worst part of the job, right? You just have to do this to people every once in a while in service of your company, and it fucking blows. There's no other way around it.
Yeah. I think when you compare Europe to US, I fired some people in my previous job. Europe is easy because you know exactly that they're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
The government is going to do things, but in US it's just the next day you're on the street, and if
Yeah.
you're living in the wrong state, you wouldn't even get anything
Yeah.
from the government.
It's really hard. So this guy, Dave Cancel, who is the CEO of Drift, you may have heard of that company.
Yeah.
I don't know. He did a podcast interview a few months ago, small ones, guys came and saw him in the city. And he was talking about how he was basically put in a position after 9/11 in New York where he had to fire people and they had families. And I knew they weren't going to get another job for a year and a half. I was 23, but our whole business went away. There's no option, right? We had to get down to 3 people to break even,
Yeah.
right? There was no funding solution. As a mid-20s person, having to just fire someone who was 35, lived in or outside of Manhattan, had kids, had a life, and I knew they weren't going to get a job for a year and a half. I wasn't in that situation. I knew these people were going to walk right out and go get another sales job. We had a really smile and dial low-end sales job that basically the companies who do that are willing to take a shot on almost anybody because it's so hard to tell who's going to excel and not, shop to shop. But yeah, America is gnarly in that way.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Redditus. Redditus helps B2B SaaS companies to set up, manage, and grow an affiliate program. In short, it means you're asking other people, affiliates, to promote your SaaS. You would only pay the affiliates a kickback fee when they deliver you paid clients. making it a very cost-effective and scalable way to grow your MRR. See more at getreaditus.com. Let's zoom out, I guess, a little bit again. Let's go back to like you wanted to build a $1 billion company, right? As mentioned, like you didn't make it. I guess if you could do things all over again, I guess from the beginning, what would you do differently? How would you approach things?
I got pretty carried away in kind of like we were very cash flow positive at 6 people, and then we ramped to 55 pretty quickly. And the ramp wasn't what ate up all the cash flow. It was like spending on, if you call it third-party spend, like sponsoring trade shows and podcasts and newsletters and this and that. And like, I had this feeling of FOMO that is very unbootstrapper. Like, I like making financial decisions in business that make sense from a $1 and $1 out perspective. I'm willing to take yo's on unmeasurable things that I think are helping in ways that are unquantifiable, but I would categorize how I was behaving as very financially irresponsible and like very much a, we just raised $50 million and like, we need to go as fast as possible way. I don't like running businesses that way. I hope that I'll never get punch drunk again like that and do that. But that's the one thing that I would have changed. I've never done anything in a state of FOMO, I don't think, that ended up being the right thing, because that's what FOMO is. It's a bunch of idiots who are caught up in euphoria, who are like right at the top, like going for everything. The SaaS bubble was on the way out, and I was like in the last inning trying to like really go for it. So I would have liked to have not lost my principles as a bootstrapper.
Yeah, I like it. I think you almost went the VC route. You just treated money as free in a way where you just went all in.
Yeah.
If you look at like how you do things right now, maybe do you have any certain processes? I guess this is like a strategy, but do you have certain things which really are the red line within the company where you follow them and you try not to deviate too much from them?
So it's really interesting you ask a question about process. If you ask my COO, this guy Santosh, what my shortcoming as an entrepreneur is, he would say one thing: process. Like, you're not, like, I love 5 to 8 people, very early stage. Everyone's very highly productive. Everyone is doing. I like to understand exactly how these other people operate. And that's just not how you run a company that has 50 to 100 people. Like, you can't do it that way. So literally in the last 60 days, like, I found, the intention wasn't even for this, but I found a CEO mentor who's also an executive coach. And the intention was, I've read the book, The Great CEO Within, several times on my journey, and something resonates with me differently every time I read it. And most recently, I'm in the scaling phase. Like, 20 million ARR is like a scaling company. You're not scaling anymore. And guys, like, at some point, the emotional burden of scaling a startup is going to be substantial. It's not really fair to just share that burden with your spouse. And it's not really effective burden sharing in the co-founder circle, because you're all living it. It's not actually sharing it. It's just whatever. You should get a therapist, a mentor, and a group of peers. Found a therapist. It's been great. You don't need it like right now, but I'm like, I want to be preventative. So we just talk about everything I'm grateful for, really. And then I found a mentor, CEO, coach, and then I'm working on the group of peers thing. It's a 2024 goal. So that was why I was seeking the CEO, coach, and mentor, and telling me like what he does. The lack of process thing came up, and I work with entire executive teams, and like, I can help you roll out, because I'm like, we tried to roll out the OKR framework 3 times last year. It didn't work at all. So I told him that, and I can pretty much work with your whole exec team, and I can get this rolled out and hold you guys accountable to doing it the right way. Like this EOS entrepreneurial. Yeah. It's like, it's a more sophisticated OKR thing. Last week we were in Vegas doing our first quarterly VTO session, came up with our rocks, like all this stuff. And that is happening right now. We're still very much in the honeymoon phase of it. I have a high degree of confidence that it will stick for 2 reasons. One, like, the executive team is so bought in this time, and it's so rigid what you have to actually do. And this guy's running the L10 meetings for the first several months, and he's going to pass it on to the implementer in our company. That is the first time that has like really happened. What is like non-negotiables? So like, now I can say that we will be evaluating people and their behaviors on core values and behaviors related to those core values. And some of them will be non-negotiable. But we had done really poorly at expectation setting within roles in our company until now, throughout our entire history. And that doesn't really matter when, again, you're 5 people and they're super productive and you know what to expect of everybody. That doesn't scale. So expectation setting and delivery part of our organization will very soon become the line that whether you want to be here or not is defined around.
Do you think having, you mentioned it already, but having somebody outside of the company run the meetings, set things up, keep everybody accountable, is that going to be crucial for the success of the implementation?
For us early on, absolutely. Yeah. For us, even to get through that 2-day offsite, having someone keeping us focused. We're so not used to like staying on track, separating idea generation from relationship conversations, from decision-making conversations, from we're going to process these issues into action items, right? It's imperative for us at least, and I think probably for most young executive teams who are not experienced in execution, to have a moderator who is literally just keeping you to the agreement that you made about how you are going to do things at the beginning of the conversation. I think in 3 months, this girl, Kelly, who's going to eventually be the implementer on all our different business lines, she will be able to run it like him, but like we all have the bad habit right now, right? So it's like we need to develop the muscle that's the new habit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have a mentor or a peer group, or maybe not a therapist, but at least they have 2 of the 3 things you have. But I guess like they would never have an actual implementer who can keep everybody on track, because it's nice to have a mentor, but it's also easy to go back in old habits.
That's why I'm feeling very grateful for this situation. Yeah. It's like somebody pitched us like 50 grand to roll out OKRs and that's it. This guy's going to end up being a little more, especially if he just keeps seeing everybody every other week, 8 people at $6.50 an hour. But like for the first 50 grand, we're getting so much more than just this implementation. It's like he's coaching all of our inexperienced managers into being more effective executives at the same time, and holding everybody accountable for rolling this out. It's a great situation. I don't know if that's normal, if there's just like executive coaches out there that you end up liking and like they'll work with everybody on your squad or whatever, but it's great for us.
Nice. We're gonna go to the final 4 questions. If we just zoom out again, like if we talk about bootstrapping, like what kind of advice would you give a SaaS founder who's just started their journey and trying to grow to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
Everybody in the beginning does not realize how precious money is, right? When you're trying to bootstrap, and especially when you raise like angel or whatever. When you're trying to bootstrap, it's regardless of whether it feels this way right now, there will be a point in the next 12 to 18 months where you're like, I am down to my last dollar. Trying to be aware of that and not spend money before you absolutely have to is critical to success. Because ultimately, my interpretation of being an entrepreneur is like, you're just trying stuff. And when it works, you have a company. And when it doesn't, you're burning money, right? So like now I have this like cash cow that is allowing me, I tried 6 things last year. We're pursuing 2 of them in a major way, right? But like when you're bootstrapping, it's hard because you only have whatever is in front of you. Yeah. And oftentimes your intuition is a very bad indicator of market viability. So you have to, and software is very expensive to develop also. So it's having this attitude towards money that like, it is very scarce until you really have something. And then I think shifting to the abundance mindset, but like still being disciplined on what you're spending on is like the most critical thing. And then the other thing would be read about what product market fit actually, what signs of it are. And until you have it, don't focus on anything else except for product market fit. Don't hire a sales guy, don't hire a marketer, don't try to do Facebook ads. Nothing is going to fucking work until that product is incredible. And the more incredible the product is, the easier it will be for you to do everything else.
Maybe then one follow-up question here, like how would you define product market fit then?
I think product market fit is very closely related to very strong word of mouth. And if you're doing nothing to promote this product, it's getting pulled out of you on its own and it's growing. That is the best first sign. And then I think our free product right now has like very good product market fit in this audience of people who are going to continue to use it for free. We can't charge people for it yet. We don't have the features to serve the larger company that would pay for it. If you're getting over 50 leads a day, sitting in a Slack channel trying to sort through them doesn't work. Like you need to filter down to the 3 that matter and then push those somewhere. Yeah. We don't have the capability to do that yet. but it serves the free guy who's getting 5 a day very well. They're very excited about seeing who's on their side or whatever. Yeah, that's all I would say about that.
To go back to the final 4 questions. So the second one, if we just passed the 10K MRR and we're now growing towards 10 million ARR, so it's a big step. What kind of advice would you give SaaS founders here?
If you can hold off, it's going to be so tempting. You're going to start getting 10 emails a day from institutional investors. If you're still a bootstrapper at 10 million, there are so many different types of people that want to give you money. I would say don't take it. I think there is a beautiful point that I'm very close to reaching. Maybe some would argue I've reached it, where you are making a lot of money every year. If you're lucky enough to take chips off the table in this round that you do, I think that's the motivating factor for most people to do it. From what I understand, they don't provide that much value. I think at best they can be not a part of your world, and at worst they can ruin your life. It's like this pitch of, oh, we're going to give you go-to-market advice or whatever. You don't need it. They're not really going to help you hire that much. So I would say, man, if you can just kick that bootstrapping thing down the road a few more years, you could get to this dream world where there's a lot of revenue, the business is substantially de-risked, like you're paying yourself a lot every year. And if you hit 10, you're on your way. At the end of the day, the potential business growth of a SaaS is related to churn rate. I don't know what the numbers are, but you gotta have pretty high churn to stop out at 10. If you don't, definitely don't raise money.
Yeah.
And if you do, you're probably not going to be able to raise money anyway.
Yeah. Nice. If we zoom even further out, would you have any general advice towards a SaaS founder who's now on the same journey as you are?
I am dumbfounded by the effectiveness of the founder brand content that I've been creating on LinkedIn. It's been a long journey. It didn't really start working until 1 year in, but I can't believe how effective it is. It requires a ton of time, a ton of energy, a lot of money, but it's the most effective vehicle I've ever seen for spreading awareness and incredibly capital efficient. So again, it's just so specific to author, platform, reader fit for the content. But if you are your ICP, meaning your ability, which like a lot of people are, because like they solve problems for eat your own dog food type thing, you have this opportunity to become an influencer in that space. And then instead of sponsoring conferences like this, you're getting asked to speak for free because you are the ICP, right? I'm talking at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Everybody in the audience after my speech will sign up for my free product. Why wouldn't they? It's made for them. Yeah. There's this incredible power with the way the world's set up now with social media, where if you are your ICP, you can do this. And if you are, I would encourage you to investigate it. Yeah. That's my advice.
And I think we're somewhat both of an example, right? Like we're both here on stage. I got invited to do the podcast here on my own target audience, same as you. Mm-hmm. I guess it worked. Like you're now at 70,000 followers LinkedIn. I'm at 15. So what?
Yep.
So
yeah, I was at 15 8 months ago.
Exactly. So you have to start somewhere. And you mentioned like from year one, it really started working. What did you do?
After year, it took me 12 months of banging my head against the wall. There were some fundamental issues. Like I was conflicted about, for what I know that I am good at as an entrepreneur, I really understand that. You know what I mean? I understand what I'm effective at and I get what I'm not good at. And if I think about what I'm good at now versus before I had 11 years of experience as an entrepreneur, it's like a professional athlete versus someone who's a middle school athlete. Like it's that much improvement in just the understanding of what I'm good at. 18 months ago, before I'd made a social media post ever, and I wasn't on social media in my personal life, I was literally where I was 11 years ago as an entrepreneur in my understanding. So I decided to commit to it. Some people helped me with it, but still throughout the first 9 months, I did not have an understanding about why I was doing what I was doing. So that felt wrong to me. It felt like I was just with my eyes closed, throwing darts out. And then I'd open my eyes and see if they hit anything close to a bullseye. And then if I didn't know why, because I was throwing darts with my eyes closed. So that's one expression of a reason that I felt wrong about it. And it wasn't really working. The second was I was trying to attract e-commerce founders to my content in order to generate leads for my business selling to e-commerce founders. I'm not an e-commerce founder. Why the fuck would they want to listen to me about anything related to e-commerce when I've never sold a product in an e-commerce environment in my life, right? There are plenty of other people making content for e-commerce people about e-commerce that they would rather listen to because they're in the game. Yeah. The same reason people want to hear me talk about bootstrapping SaaS. I'm in the game every day, right? So that was a problem. I was very conflicted about it. I didn't know how to resolve it other than to just talk about my own business, which That's interesting to an e-commerce guy, but it's much more interesting to a SaaS person, especially when I start talking about issues related to sales and marketing in a Bootstrap SaaS. That becomes what people actually want to consume who are in sales and marketing and working in SaaS. That's the big things. Like in the story about when I really knew it clicked. So like the peril of the $1 billion thing not working out was like we ramped our sales force way too much and then it just wasn't working and our VP sales quit and we went from like 20 to 4 salespeople in one day, right? So second time, mass layoff. And I posted about that on LinkedIn. And after I posted about it on LinkedIn, a bunch of people, investors, SaaS founders, whatever, they were coming to me and they're like, man, I don't know what our outbound is doing right now. Because like SaaS was slowing down, the Fed rates were high, people were being told not buy SaaS or whatever. So they're like, and AI automation tools, AI, everything. It's making it much harder to do this job of generating demand from outbound sales. Predictable revenue model is dead, right? So people start talking to me about it in every way, shape, or form. Basically, the summary was people had either already cut their entire BDR team or they were thinking about it and wanted to because they knew it was the most unproductive thing they could see to get a lot closer to profitability. So I wrote this post and I posted it and it was 100 times more engagement than I had ever gotten. It was basically like, I spoke to 8 BDR managers and here's the 10 things that they said. And it was being very clear that everyone is thinking about chopping these guys. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And then I remember clearly, I was like on vacation in Santa Fe with my friends. I'm like, guys, I got to write 3 LinkedIn posts. And I wrote them. And I was like, if these 3 posts crush like that last one, then I understand this machine. If they do not, then I don't. I'm still in the spot that I was before. Crushed. From then on, I was like, I know exactly what to write to crush on LinkedIn. But that took 12 months. And like I had a consultant, I had a ghostwriter before. It's just, he got a recommendation that I would make is if your audience is not on LinkedIn, don't do LinkedIn. If we hadn't pivoted to this B2B thing or started a new business, I was going to focus on how to be good at Twitter, which is much harder than LinkedIn, just the supply demand of the content and the creators and consumers. That would have been terrible, but I would have tried. But yeah, that's it.
Nice. I guess the final question, you mentioned like you didn't know things 12 months ago, but what is one thing you wish you knew 10 years ago?
10 years ago. So I would have been basically starting my first company. I didn't have this, I was a credit default swap trader. I worked at Lehman Brothers for 10 years, like just nothing to do with SaaS, right? Couldn't be farther, very few transferable skills between the two. And this notion that I said, when you asked me, what would you recommend any entrepreneur? Like this notion to like try to have an understanding of what product market fit is and pursue that. It was like the farthest thing from my radar you could have ever imagined, right? I was just trying to like this product we were selling was an email newsletter app, literally just copied MailChimp and we're trying to steal Constant Contact customers, which by the way is fucking stupid because you should have copied Constant Contact to steal Constant Contact customers, which we ended up kind of building, right? That was the mindset that I was in at the time. Oh yeah, we'll just copy this UI and get these people to switch over. I think the opposite now. I'm like, how can I be more different than anything that has ever existed in the world? Totally focused on that and that alone. And kind of everything that I do, because I believe that is the most effective marketing. It's whatever. You're in the milk aisle, it's like milk, not milk. What do you focus on? The not milk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the approach you have on LinkedIn where you go full transparency or radical transparency, as you called it.
Yeah, and if everybody starts doing that, which they will not for reasons that they can't, then I will figure out something else to do that no one else is willing to do, basically.
Nice. And if people want to get in contact with you, I can imagine they can't connect with you anymore on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place where I'm spending most of the time. But you can email me at adam@retention.com also, and I'll respond to that.
Cool. Live from Austin. Thanks for coming on to the show. We're going to put a poll and we're going to put a question at the end of the podcast. So if you are listening on Spotify, check that out, leave a comment, and thank you for coming on, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you liked this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show, if you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Reditus, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.